just being a contactee or dealing with this stuff is weird enough that you don't have to make stuff up. Who needs to go lie? Honestly, I had never really planned to come forward. And I also had a near-death experience when I died. I had died on the way to the hospital, and I couldn't remember who I was for like almost 2 months. The near-death experience changed me. He's different. He's just ancient, and he's giving me a bunch of information. That information was that this was very real. I was suffering from something that they called, and they're giving me as information, temporal aphasia. I'll start off by saying that the craft itself, all over this craft, there's like this mist, the texture of the inside of the craft, the walls, but the way that these are actually created, it also can heal human flesh. And during this time, there's a being on the side, because my dream is to see the communities, especially the melanated and non-melanated communities, come together.
Hey everyone, welcome to Edge of Wonder here at ECETI. It's been an amazing experience so far. We have with us probably the most underrated person here at this event that we found, Barry Littleton, who has some crazy firsthand experiences and getting into all sorts of like technology, and your story's been blowing us away.
Yeah, so we would love to hear a little bit about all the different stuff that brought you here today. I mean, you're out there in the Midwest, right? And
yes.
You grew up experiencing these things, and then you're putting yourself out there and you're trying to get the information out about the different things that you've seen. So tell us what happened to you. Like, what happened to you when you were young, and what brings you, like, how did things develop to get you to a place like ECETI to be talking about crafts and the technology that are on these things?
Honestly, I had never really planned to come forward, but I had an accident about 8-9 years ago, and I took several traumatic brain injuries, and I had died on the way to the hospital, and I couldn't remember who I was for like almost 2 months, about a month and a half.
Wow.
And so they said I would be most likely a vegetable devoid of lifelong memories. So anything was the case though, and I also had a near-death experience when I died. And it was somewhat different than what I had been experiencing from childhood to adulthood, which was kind of extraterrestrial star beings, that type of a thing. But this was more angelic, and it kind of really changed me. The near-death experience changed me, and everything just kind of went forward from there. And I kept doing these interviews, and here I am.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So how old were you again when this happened?
Everything started when I was 7 years old. It seems like things amped up quite a bit. These things I can now, as an adult, recollect back and understand this was several modalities or stages of contact. So.
Mm-hmm.
And so Barry, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
You're like Oprah.
Yeah. I'm from the Midwest. I graduated in psychology, sociology, and ethnic studies. I worked in the juvenile services and still consult with that is basically what I enjoy. I always want to try to help a little bit. I spent the majority of my life trying to understand and research these crazy things that were happening to me. I mean, I'm sorry, it's not things I was talking about. I never thought I'd be in a position that I was talking about it now. Had it not been for that accident, so that changed things for me a little bit. And now I want to at least try to share if it's going to help, because I think kind of this place is in trouble a little bit.
Absolutely.
We need the 0-point technologies, and I guarantee you, if I can describe these technologies, there's probably other contactees, probably younger, that maybe have the equations for it. That's serious, and it needs to be evaluated and taken serious by the scientific community instead of all the things that surround, the subject. It kind of discredits the real information.
Well, and how does your friends, like, through this whole process, like your personal friends, and how is the community overall, just society overall, has there been any pushback against you? How has it been coming out, talking about among this thing, even with your own family members?
My family has been pretty open. I have one sibling that has had some encounters. They're not like mine, but some stuff has happened to them, they've been very supportive, especially during my recovery. Because in some ways, just my ability that I have these such clear memories where I should not through all the TBIs I took.
Yeah, that
you know
in
what I mean?
itself is
Yeah,
wonderful.
so there's a reason for it, I know. So I'm trying to just, if I die again, I don't want to know my panoramic life review being told I didn't do everything I was supposed to do. Seriously, I need to hit my head again for that.
For sure.
That answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, but is there any pushback that you're
Oh,
getting?
sorry.
No.
Yeah. It's been a little. I've taken some arrows, but I'll do that because my dream is to see the communities, especially the melanated and non-melanated communities, come together and start really not just learning about each other's culture, but sharing these experiences, especially for contactees. It's rough. When I was a kid, I didn't have anybody to talk to about this. Heck, when I was a young adult, didn't have anybody to talk to this about.
Yeah,
So
for real.
so little things like that need to change. I've got some pushback, and the majority of it is YouTube is really bad about trolls. It's YouTube seems to be the worst.
Yeah.
Some bad emails, couple of kill yourself, shut your mouth, a few things like that. But hey, that's all right.
Yeah.
Not the amount of positive responses because so many people that have normal, everyday people that have encounters are not aware of it, and they're trying to find a platform just that is similar to trigger memories or for comfort.
So yeah, what actually happened to you when you were 7? What was like your first experience that kind of got you on the road to kind of experiencing even more? Because I imagine it was like a domino effect.
Yeah. Well, things started like I would wake up sometimes, like not at my house, and in like what it seemed to be like some type of I wouldn't call it a laboratory, a room, like a school. And in the school was like these things on a table, like a feather, a bowl of water, and then these metal balls, like a bigger ball with like 4 or 5 that surround it. And the thing is, you have to move the feather with your mind first, and then stir the water, and then you can start manipulating the balls with your mind, telekinetically. And I started being able to do that when I would be in the school at night. So that was the first thing that really started making me know that I was having experiences, because it was very real. The next day at school, I'd be tired, but yet I couldn't do any of these things I was able to do there at my school during the day. So that was somewhat disconcerting. Then when I was in the 6th grade, I had an experience where I woke up on a craft, and that's normally how it is. I wake up there physically, and that's somewhat startling. It's not the same as just dreaming something. When you're there, actually, you can tangibly touch something. It changes everything. And then if you're in the presence of a non-human, it even throws you that much further off. Okay, but in this situation, I woke up on this craft, and I can see 2 other craft in this huge viewer that are sucking up clouds underneath them. And I used to have, when I was also young, I had around 7, a kid starts showing up playing with me. All right, every now and again. It was when I was under low supervision, which wasn't very often. As soon as somebody would come in 5 or 10 minutes, he would always have to go do something or leave. Well, on this craft, and he was telepathic. I want to throw that into you too. Also, he was telepathic. Something as a kid you don't always recognize. You think maybe every so many kids can do it, but in this case, it's no. Anyway, in the 6th grade, when I woke up on this craft, and I'm seeing these other craft sucking up these clouds underneath them, there's a being floating kind of on the deck plates, and he's an insectoid, and telepathically talking to me. But this is the same individual that had come and played with me a few times. And what's interesting when dealing with that, I think, is I've tried to understand when he would show up and play, he had like these kind of kitty cat glasses on and like just a hat, and he was on a swing, and he was dressed normal. So in that way, he was doing something, I think, through the optical nerves and consciously, so that I was still perceiving him as more human than what he was. When I see him in the suit on this craft, he's different. He's just ancient, and he's giving me a bunch of information. That information was that the acid rain is very bad for your planet. We're trying to reverse some of it, but we're having having problems. That must be what these ships were doing. And now they know what smog is. That's probably smog that they were actually starting to draw up. So I never heard acid rain. I drilled him about that a little bit. In the back of him is an engine that we'll probably talk about a little bit later. But anyway, this was very real. And then I wake up at home, and you can't prove anything. A week later, I'm in sixth grade class, and I'm reading something. Our class had to read something called the Scholastic News. Mm-hmm. And
I remember that.
Yeah, for real.
I read that too. Yeah.
There was nothing scholastic about it.
kind of torture, you know.
Really, seriously.
And this teacher, she made somebody get up and read sometimes on Fridays. And you know how it's stressful. But I got called on, interestingly enough. And on this one, the front. This is 1986, but it was about the Statue of Liberty. And the article I had to read was concerning it being shut down to be repainted, at least the parts of it to be repainted due to damage from acid rain. And when I actually saw that, I remember screaming, "Acid rain!" And everybody started laughing at me because it looked like I was being funny, but I wasn't. It really just shocked me. This is when this physical experience went over into my daily life, and it was definitely real because he gave me that information.
So you were kind of blowing these things off as dreams maybe, or you didn't really understand them, and then as soon as you saw acid rain on that Scholastic News magazine, you were like, man, this is real.
It took me for a loop, you know what I mean?
Wow.
To the point of where I was trying to, after that, force or create the contact somehow, make it happen, you know, and that isn't how that goes. Kind of they make contact when they want, you know what I mean? But it was definitely real. And in fact, my contact kind of fell off from the age of about 12 after that experience to about 18. And they started picking up again. They did get more physical, and I wasn't fully prepared for that. So although it was positive, it's like sometimes.
So you mentioned a bunch of craft, you mentioned a little bit about the technology, but were you interacting with beings while you were on these ships? Well, you know, I mean, what did you see?
Yeah, what I call adult onset experiences, which is where I involved missing time. And somebody was with me three or four times I had this, and each time averaged about 4 and 4.5 hours of time, missing time. And during that, like after it was over, I could immediately start seeing the images of beings and things like that, and you know the information they were giving me, and especially the technology. But interestingly enough, as it gets away from the horizon, the event horizon, the memory retention fades a little bit. But there are definitely beings. I've seen corporeal beings that was insectoid. I've seen another that was more of an amphibious, okay? That has a brain that looked like a reverse brain. And then on Earth, the only thing I've seen that looks like that is the coral brain coral here on Earth, okay? And then there's something else that like there were, for example, these eggs on this craft. They're into this organic wall, and there are lights floating around in the inside of a mist. There's mist all over this ship, all of them. But this one is these orbs and plasma configurations floating in there. I thought that was a power source at first, all right? And I noticed that some of the beings that are partially phased out are always looking at these eggs also. And on each deck or each room I was in on this craft, there are these eggs configurations into the wall, all right? I found out that these lights are actually life forms, most likely command officer, non-corporeal ones, non-physicals. And you know, you got different things for consciousness. Some of them look like different configurations of light, some different configurations of plasma, and others just, there were some orbs in there too.
What kind of colors? Was there a certain color that you saw with in these eggs? Also, is there any kind of smell that you noticed in particular?
Yeah, the lights, they were all different colors. Like one of them would be blue. There was one of them was a plasma. It looked like more of a pink color, and even had a different configuration of it, like almost a Saturn configuration on it. But they're bouncing around in there, just moving around. There's a deep mist in there. And so you asked something else to that
Or
question.
the smell, or even the temperature of the room.
Yeah, well, all over this craft, there's like this mist, but it smelled a lot like Windex to me. yeah, a lot like Windex. You know what I mean? I guess that's some type of a ammonia disinfectant, but Windex-like to me. And it, honestly, it's not all that easy to breathe that for that long. It starts making you a little nauseated. You know?
Now, do you think was this your body astral projecting, or were you there in the physical? Was it like your body being brought up? How did that work?
You know, the way I know it wasn't astral because I was suffering from something that they called, and they're giving me as information, temporal aphasia, okay? And what that is because the outside and the inside of the craft are not in the same dimension. So for us to have a third dimensional body in a multi-dimensional environment like that, it causes this sickness. And I would describe it as being like maybe double seasickness or being on a roller coaster and feeling those G's pulling you down. You know what I mean? Like that feeling all the time. And, you know, I couldn't figure out until I got older why I dislike merry-go-rounds so much. You know, it feels like that. I don't take those well, but that's that temporal aphasia. And the longer I was there, the more it increased to where it's messing with your manual dexterity. It's messing with your stuff. To me, it feels like
they'd give you something to eat, and you'd be like poking your head or something.
even more like, you know what I mean? Kind of like when you're on the roller coaster and you're going down the first real big one.
Yeah.
You know how it takes you for a minute. It like that, but it just kind of doesn't stop.
Man.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your body wouldn't get used to it. It would actually get worse over time. So they'd have to send you back. Is that how it worked? Wow, interesting.
Yeah. That would be that room. I have an illustration of a room that's actually, I didn't realize, but it's more like a hyperbaric room, I think, where they're actually giving you a little oxygen and they orienting you to when they send you back, so you don't have too much effects when you're in your normal walking day life. You know.
You've met with some different military officers at different points in your life, and they seem to have corroborated some of the experiences that you had while you were up there. Can you tell us anything about that? Like what happened, and how can I think the folks at home understand that these are real experiences, not just something that was somehow made up or in a dream state?
Well, you know, I've never been a part of the military or had any really interaction with those special whistleblowers until recently, for 48 hours ago. But that's, you know what I mean? I've kind of, in a way, it was kind of, my experiences happened, they're all positive in nature, although the missing time was very disturbing, but they weren't the same as somebody who had military background, you know, and has seen some things that are way beyond what I have knowledge of. But what's interesting enough, when you start talking to someone that is a whistleblower and probably a real one, the amount of similarities in experiences is very interesting. You know what I mean? And all the way around. So it's part of a puzzle that has to come together. So in that way. So I think that's important, you know, in that way. Does that kind of answer that?
Yeah.
Sure does.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I've had a lot of experiences, and don't get me wrong, they're really kind of crazy, okay? But I mean, we're far out, you know what I mean? But they were never negative in that way or anything like that. So although they were really far out, I never had kind of Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith knocking on my door with a little pin and put me out, you know. Yeah.
No,
but
okay.
Otherwise, I know there are people that have been through that
the
negative abductions.
I misunderstood Peter actually, because Peter, the way I thought Peter was describing it, but I think it had to do with more of the technology aspect.
Oh, that's cool.
We have taken you to the edge. Please watch your step.
So Barry, why don't we get more into the technology aspect of the alien crafts and everything that you experienced?
Yeah, while you were up there, you probably interacted with a bunch of these different engines and different things. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, I'll start off by saying that the craft itself, although for example, we'll start off with the one that's really the first one for the first missing time I had an adult onset experiences. The outside of that appeared to be some type of metal, you know what I mean? At least at first. And then once inside though, there's the organic nature to this, all right? And that is actually more like a fungus, a type of a mushroom inside. The texture of the inside of the craft, the walls, to me when I would touch it, it was more consistent than a mushroom, but it looked similar and it had that type of a texture, all right? So that takes us into the fact that a lot of these crafts that I've been on board are organic in nature, that they're actually living beings. And my understanding is how they're composed. The outer structure of this craft is what they're telling me. Like I said, it's disconcerting because they're answering some of my questions before I can formulate them telepathically. But the way that these are actually created are you have metals that are mined from planets that are devoid of Van Allen belts. They get a lot of bombardment by cosmic radiation that makes, I think, the metal much more resistant. And you've also got a fungus, something similar to a mushroom type of fungus that's all incorporated also with DNA from the crew. And what that gives them is a symbiotic connection with this craft to where they can be a type of the power source, aid with that, and also control without having devices and things. So that's part of it there. So all three of these compounds are taken and grown over a singularity, over a wormhole, I guess, a small one, probably a micro one is what I'm kind of getting, kind of like the one we're seeing on that mountain out there, that glowing, everybody's tripping out on. That type of a singularity is what these are grown over. So therefore, the engines themselves are temporally displaced. I've seen two different engines. One of them was it was like a spear, let's say about a 6-foot round spear, and it's got these rings around it that look like kind of two Saturn rings going like this, all right? In fact, when I saw the movie Contact years later, I saw the ship, the thing that they sent her off on, it had some things moving on it like that. So it was like similar to that, all right? And above it was, it emitted a golden light, went up, and it went up what appeared to be going up into a city almost, or not a city, I'm sorry, a building. You know, not a skyscraper, but a building, a fairly large one. Now, this actually, this ball that I described, it's a golden ball, but it has on it what looks like a honeycomb. It's got the honeycomb thing. So this took me.
Is that like a hexagon?
Well, yeah, the hexagon is a honeycomb.
Yeah, the hexagon. You know, that took me when I started researching. I always try to use science to research and try to back up what I experienced. It's the only basis you really have because the whole thing's so far out.
But a honeycomb can be many of them.
Oh yeah,
together.
yeah. Oh, I see what you're asking.
So is it one hexagon just kind of going up, or like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
The ball itself had many of them on there.
Oh, they did.
So that took me into kind of what is called the honeycomb conjecture, which is why do the bees actually make that for their storing their energy and their power?
Right.
Yeah. So that's one engine there. Okay. Seen another that is 3 crystal lattices. All right, large ones. And when I say that, I'd say in height they're a little shorter than a basketball goal, about 9 feet tall and about 3 feet wide. And something different about these crystals is, like most of the crystals I've seen on these technology, or these craft, it's bioluminescence and chemical luminescence coming from out of the inside of it.
So what colors were you seeing with these crystals?
It's like an orange golden color pulsing in there. You know what I mean? Kind of like between two, but it keeps pulsing that basically. And most of them seem to do that. And they're wrapped in what looked like copper kind of, all right?
It was like copper color and everything? Or
Copper, like almost, when people wire up crystals now,
Yeah.
somewhat similar, a little more
Yeah.
formula, but but wrapped like with a caduceus way almost. Look like a magnetic generator of some type on top and the bottom. But this thing's big, okay, and it's in a crystal or a glass it's in, and they start like spinning. When they start spinning, they spin so fast that I can't hardly see them anymore. And during this time, there's a being on the side, which is the same one. This is the acid rain experience, same experience. This being, this insectoid, is over there, and he's telling me, not just telepathically, not just can this engine power planetoids and legion ships, it also can heal human flesh.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
and I don't know if it's the sound I was hearing that it was generating, and I mentioned that it seems like there's when the doggone elder swings that bull roar, I think it's called. Woo, 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 woo,
Yeah,
woo.
yeah.
Sounds like that
Yeah.
kind of. A lot of the craft emit a sound like that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because when you were describing the craft making the sound, that's exactly what I was thinking. You know, even before you said it, and I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to put words in your mouth and then be like, yeah, but but now that you said it, I was like, yeah, that was exactly what because I've heard that sound before. So.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Going on the mushroom aspect, just recently there was an article that came out talking about how there are mushrooms that eat radiation, and then you were talking something about Chernobyl, right?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I thought what you were saying was really interesting about these mushrooms, just because, I think a lot of the technology that we seem to have is this kind of like metal-based technology. It's very AI-oriented, and I think a lot of this technology came from the Greys, but the more advanced stuff, the stuff that you're talking about, seems to be more of like a organic. It's like the most divine intelligence actually comes from the organic matter, not from these strange, created matters by these wonky beings that are trying to control us. I thought that was really interesting. Go ahead.
I'll tell you what, that's called radiotropic fungus, and it's found in Fukushima and Chernobyl, growing on the walls. And what it actually does is take, there's a little laugh when I say it, it takes actually gamma radiation, it converts gamma radiation into the growth cycle, Okay, and that's what the Hulk does. So
Yeah.
it's got Lou Ferrigno on Chernobyl,
crazy,
man.
right?
Yeah, Lou Ferrigno in Fukushima.
We're gonna Photoshop Lou Ferrigno in Chernobyl. You know that. That's great.
But interestingly enough, what I've talked to some scientists that talk kind of quietly to me, and there was a hypothesis I had heard that actual fungus was sent here from like a type 4 or type 5 civilization that might be on the micro, pico, or nano scale, and that there might be not just melanin dominant, but from dark matter or something like that. But they sent that fungus here to help us with the radiation cleanup. And I think that's just a fascinating concept, and that takes us kind of more into the fungus subject and how fungus is connected to these craft, the higher vibration, the more organic ones, and how when these craft come here, they immediately started interacting with the tree system of the planet. That's the true internet. And right now you can see this. People say probably, oh, he's crazy. Yeah, well, check out what we see right now, the connection between fungus and trees as it is. You see mushrooms growing on them all the time, fungus growing on them all the time. There's a symbiotic connection. Why would it be any different on the galactic scale?
Yeah, and you were saying something too about the like earlier, and we were talking earlier, and you said something about the mushroom cap actually looks like a UFO, right?
Yeah.
I mean that was really interesting.
Yeah, it led me to kind of look at even more into mushrooms. Like there's this trichodermy ricci that they're using right now to start repairing infrastructure, like bridges and roads. It's a type of a mushroom. So they're getting there to starting to making this into some type of a harder compound like I'm talking about. I think we're behind, but I'm seeing science going that way, and I get always pretty elated.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super cool. So I was hearing this story a couple weeks ago of some woman who had decided to just set up shop in Chernobyl and live there. And doctors were baffled by her. I think it was even one of these documentaries recently that was on one of these big, like Amazon or Netflix or something. Anyway, I didn't see it. This is just what I heard. But the doctors were fascinated with this woman because there was no problems with her. She was living in that area. She was living off the land. She was doing everything that a normal person would do, but no radiation. So maybe it is that somebody put the mushrooms in that area, it actually ate up all of the radiation, and then this woman is able to live in that place. I don't know. I mean,
or she's growing her mushrooms herself around the area or something, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because I heard proposals to maybe make that more of a mass production to help, but I don't know where it went. It takes us into the free energy deal, but I like to see stuff like that to maybe materialize. It's just such an odd phenomenon that I think it merits a lot of research, and scientific focus.
Yeah. For sure.
Oh, very interesting.
And let alone, but you can always think that. I think when we go into more Type 1 civilization and into true space exploration, perhaps we're going to incorporate much more of the organic into that.
Let me ask you a couple questions. So, I've had dreams in the past of running on African plains. I was in a different body. It seemed like it was a different lifetime. I remember it very clearly, and we were just running. And I took time during one of our episodes to really research the Zulu tribe, and they're running a lot. And there's been a lot of speculation that some of the races, especially in Africa, have been influenced by and or of alien or extraterrestrial descent or something like that, or somehow connected to those races. And I was wondering if you had any information on that, or that anything that you wanted to talk about related to that.
Yeah, a lot of information came from the Zulu shaman medicine man, Credo Mutua. He was one of the first that I had heard that was really divulging information about extraterrestrials and African lineage. As far as I know, I think that what needs to be acknowledged is that who are called the first here, the seed bearers, that they're always still calling the Anunnaki now. That's such a popular term, but there have been many more factions that came here, especially in melanin dominant factions. You had ones that look African American, African, Chinese, Polynesian. All these are races that exist in the cosmos, and then for the majority, non-humans, but we won't even go into that.
Right,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Innumerable. I mean, there's blue races, green races. I've heard about all kinds of things.
Yeah, and so acknowledging that, some of the first individuals, like example, what comes up here from Peter, he talked about a lot. Actually did a video about this, that some of the Aboriginal elders were releasing artifacts saying that they were from the Pleiades, made in their image, and the first Pleiadians here were black. And that's not what we see when we look in the mainstream. We see Fabio,
Fabio,
Christy Brinkley,
or
maybe
like
Kevin Sorbo's Hercules,
Galadriel from Lord of the Rings. Or whatever.
I guess they don't all look like that. So I think it's just incorporating just with this whole the media in about not just black contactees but black extraterrestrials. Because for me, you know, one reason I came forward is I didn't see anybody like Barney Hill that was like me in the phenomenon. I didn't see any beings that looked like me either. You know what I mean? So that's things, and something happened to me where I encountered somebody that was rather odd that was melanated. So I didn't want to know more about that, and you can't find it. That's frustrating. So I'm hoping that that's starting to change with the communication. And at this where we're at right now, I'm seeing it. It's been great. You know what I mean? And it's
Awesome.
really cool.
Yeah, it's totally cool. And you know, I mean, there really are, like, the universe is so big. Like, there are so many different races out there. We owe it to ourselves to understand them and try to, you know, dig into these things and figure things out a little bit, you know?
I'll give you one real quick.
Please do.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, one of those beings that I mentioned, it's one of the few that gave me a name, Mana. This being stood about, man, a little over 7 feet tall, all right? But its head was very large, but it looked like a brain on the outside, like brain coral. And, you know, not that long ago, just a few weeks ago, sometimes I get to meditate or whatever, but I think, well, gee, I'm a little older now, but a lot of that stuff stopped until I came out here. But I was like, why did some of these beings step forward and then they step back and just everything's telepathic, telethought now? You know, why would that being in particular, I saw that being on a couple of different craft. All right, and even more shorter beings like it that were kind of phased out, but still the reverse brain thing. I was thinking, why would that being be here involved with Earth, and why with me? But you know, all this alliance I've dealt with, seem to be more involved with Earth than they are humanity, and they seem to be very concerned about Earth. You know, so I'm thinking this, and I wake up the next day thinking about this being, and this thing's coming to me. Coral bleaching. You know, I didn't know what that was. When I start looking it up, it takes me to the Great Barrier Reef and how it's dying from coral bleaching. You know, that the heating, they're saying the heating of the water is making the coral lose its color, and it's making, you know, it's dying basically. And I'm thinking, wow, and then on top of that, there's what, 20% of it that is not dying that they're calling supercoral. And the scientists are trying to evolve the supercoral to repopulate the Great Barrier Reef. Got a lot of work ahead.
Yeah.
But you know, in reality, I start thinking, gosh, there's a connection there, because Mana's head looks like brain coral. And is that what that's dealing with? And I don't know how far we have to go for coral as an organism to become sentient. But you know, maybe, I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but these are beings that can bend the space-time continuum, so all bets are off.
Right.
Well, I know that's a being from the future coming back, or a race coming back trying to help. You know, another deal, but we wouldn't really, I guess, see it. Sorry.
Yeah, that's great.
No need to be sorry. Amazing
Fascinating.
stuff. It's super fascinating. So one of the questions we get a lot from our YouTube fans out there, shout out to you guys, is something called black goo. And you know, Rob and I know a little bit about it. We haven't really dived too much into it. And on the panel, I know you were talking about it a little bit, so I want to give you some time to hear what your thoughts are on black goo.
Not a total expert on it, but you know, I had some speculation for a long time that oil itself, unrefined oil, was sentient, based on some of the things I see it doing, and almost when I see something with the BP oil spill.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like it was an angry organism escaping, and more than that, the fact it's trapped on the platonic plates, but it has such a negative effect with water, the main substance on this planet. That's very odd. And sometimes we think, like I was thinking, well, you know, maybe perhaps in a war, whatever went on, type 1 civilization, is that some type of AI that was put under there and trapped under there? I've thought that. But my understanding of the black goo, what they say is that's actually a sentient organism from somewhere else that came here on probably the nano or micro or pico scale. And what it did when it got here is symbiotically joined with oil. And that's when you start getting this type of a sludge that's creating all sorts of havoc everywhere, even to the point of drowning out people's clairvoyant abilities. So.
And there's some people who, on like YouTube and stuff, right, are claiming that they have black goo or something. What were you saying about that?
I've seen that. Everybody, those people get a lot of views too, a lot of likes to it. But the black goo got a test tube and going like that, you know.
Right.
Man, that's ferromagnetic fluid. You can get it on Amazon. It's for magic tricks.
I like me some magic, but that's not black goo.
I'll say this much. Just being a contactee or dealing with this stuff is weird enough that you don't have to make stuff up. Who needs to go lie?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know, it's weird. It's totally weird.
It is weird. Well, Barry, how can people find out more about you and what you're doing and your work?
I've got a website. I need to actually update it quite a bit. That Lord knows that's a little bit more than I thought it was going to be. I love all you web designers. You got a serious task. That's not my deal. Anyway, it's barrylittleton.com. You can reach me, email barrylittleton13@gmail.com. At my website, however, there are links to the social media I'm involved with. I do a lot on YouTube. I've got about 200 videos on there.
Wow.
I'm on Patreon, and also I do a little on Facebook. I don't always accept everybody's friend requests, but I try to post some stuff.
And we'll put all the links below the video so everyone can find you and everything.
Yeah, Barry, thanks so much for giving us your time today. We really appreciate you, and man, thanks for coming out and telling your story because people need to hear it. I mean, there's so many contactees out there that actually aren't coming forward, and I think you give a lot of inspiration to these people who are experiencing these things and don't know who to talk to about it. So it's really awesome.
Yeah, and I wanted any last words that you want to say?
I also want to say this has been a wonderful conference. I've got to meet you gentlemen and everybody. I've met other contactees, and it's really pulling all together. Like you have other contactees. I may not be military, mine aren't like that, but there are others that are, and it's all makes this deal. So I just want to say thank you for having me on here, and it's been really cool to see we're not just talking about trying to bring things together. It's happening out here, and it's cool. So thanks.
That's awesome, Barry. Well, we're going to ask you to take us out.
This is Barry Littleton coming to you hard from the edge of wonder. See you on the edge. That's good. Oh, sorry about this.
No,
Is he snoring? Can you hear that? Okay. He's definitely snoring. So just make sure to keep an ear out for it, because if he starts snoring again, go ahead.
Yeah,
if he starts snoring again, we might want to nudge him. We're at ECETI, folks. That can make it onto the bloopers, I think. We always have bloopers at the end of our... Is that guy over there snoring?